"Don't move," Ethan Blackwood warned. But the young Omega inside the forbidden enclosure only glanced over her shoulder and lifted the wooden brush from the enormous black wolf's fur. For 3 stunned seconds, nobody outside the iron gate breathed. Grim, the most feared war beast in Blackridge Fortress, lay stretched across the straw with his massive head resting beside Emily Carter's knee, his eyes half closed as she gently worked another tangle from his coat. This was the same beast veteran handlers refused to approach without reinforced barriers between them. The same creature whose warning sign had been painted in red letters large enough to read from 50 feet away. "Keep out." Yet Emily sat barely inches from him, calm enough to hum beneath her breath. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now back to Emily. Ethan raised one hand, stopping his guards from rushing forward. Something about the scene felt too fragile to disturb. Emily wore the plain gray dress of a fortress servant, and loose strands of chestnut hair had escaped her braid. She looked nothing like the powerful wolf handlers Ethan employed. She was small, quiet, almost painfully ordinary. But Grim watched her as though she were the only person in the world worth trusting. "Emily Carter," Ethan said slowly. Her hand stopped. She knew that voice. Everyone in the Northern Territories knew that voice. She turned, and the color drained from her face. The Alpha King stood beyond the gate in a black winter coat, his broad shoulders blocking the morning light. His expression revealed nothing, but his pale gray eyes moved from Emily to the brush, then to Grim. "Your Majesty." Emily started to rise. Grim immediately lifted his head. A low warning sound rolled through his chest. The guard stiffened. Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Stay where you are." Emily slowly settled again, and Grim relaxed almost instantly. That troubled Ethan more than the warning growl had. Grim obeyed strength. He respected dominance. Trust was something else entirely. "How long have you been in there?" Ethan asked. "I'm not sure." Emily swallowed. "Maybe 20 minutes. One guard whispered something under his breath. Ethan ignored him. 20 minutes. Royal handlers had spent 2 years trying to stand within 10 feet of Grim without frightening or agitating him. This Omega had apparently walked inside with a grooming brush. "Why?" Ethan asked. Emily looked down at the beast. Her fingers disappeared carefully into the thick black fur near his shoulder. "Because everyone kept saying he was dangerous." Ethan frowned. "That made you enter his enclosure?" "No." Her voice softened. "It made me wonder why." She separated the fur near Grim's neck, revealing a patch of irritated skin beneath the heavy coat. Ethan's expression changed. Emily touched nowhere near the tender spot. "He wasn't trying to scare people away," she whispered. "He was trying to tell them something hurt." Grim released a slow breath and rested his head against her knee again. Emily resumed brushing him with long, patient strokes. Ethan had ruled wolves for 12 years, commanded armies, settled pack disputes, and faced creatures other men feared to name. Yet standing outside that gate, he felt strangely uncertain. Because the supposedly weakest Omega in his fortress had noticed something every expert had missed. Then Grim opened one golden eye, looked directly at Ethan, and shifted closer to Emily. Grim shifted closer until the weight of his enormous shoulder rested against Emily's leg, and the simple movement sent a ripple of disbelief through everyone beyond the gate. Emily felt it too, but for a different reason. Beneath the thick black coat, the beast was trembling. Not with anger, with discomfort. She lowered the brush and let her hand hover near his shoulder without touching the irritated patch. "Easy," she murmured. "Nobody is going to make you do anything." Ethan heard every word. His guards were trained to command animals with clipped orders and firm voices. Yet Emily spoke to Grim as though his choice mattered. Stranger still, the beast seemed to understand. "Open the gate," Ethan ordered. The nearest guard hesitated. "Your Majesty, the protocol says no one enters while Grim is loose." Ethan turned his pale gray eyes toward him. "I am aware of the protocol." The lock clicked. Emily's pulse quickened as Ethan stepped inside alone. At more than 6 feet tall, he seemed to fill the narrow enclosure, dressed in black against the pale morning light. She had seen him only from a distance before, crossing fortress courtyards surrounded by officers and advisors. Up close, his presence was quieter than she expected. Controlled. Watchful. Grim lifted his head again. Ethan stopped 8 feet away. He has never done this with a stranger, he said. Emily looked down at the wolf. Maybe he does not think I am one. Ethan studied her. You have met him before? No, Your Majesty. Then why would he trust you? Emily wished she knew. That morning had begun like every other morning at Blackridge Fortress, with servants moving through stone corridors before sunrise, and Emily trying not to attract attention. At 22, she had already learned that an Omega with a weak shifting ability was safest when nobody remembered she was there. She carried laundry, polished silver, swept fireplaces, and accepted the task stronger wolves dismissed as beneath them. Most days, invisibility felt almost like protection. That morning, it had become a joke. Marcus Hale, the royal beastmaster, had found her carrying fresh linens past the kennels and called her over while several handlers watched. Carter, he had said, amusement hiding beneath his smile. Since you are so good at quiet little chores, take Grim his water. The others had laughed. Emily had understood the message. Frighten the weak Omega. Give everyone something to talk about over breakfast. She had carried the bucket anyway. But when she reached the enclosure, Grim had not charged the gate. He had remained in the far corner, favoring one side, his black coat dull beneath the winter light. Then Emily noticed the way he kept turning toward his shoulder, but never quite touching it. Pain had a language. She knew that language better than most. Back in the enclosure, Grim suddenly shifted again, and Emily caught a faint metallic scent beneath his fur. Her expression tightened. Ethan noticed immediately. What is it? She carefully separated another section of black fur near Grim's neck. Something small caught the light. Not blood. Metal. Emily leaned closer, and her breath stalled. Buried beneath the tangled coat were several thin silver fragments, each no longer than a thorn. Grim whimpered softly. Ethan's calm expression vanished. Do not touch them, he said. Emily looked up. Why? Ethan stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the silver. Because those did not get there by accident. Ethan's words changed the air inside the enclosure. Emily looked again at the tiny silver fragments hidden beneath Grim's coat, and suddenly the beast's reputation felt less like a warning and more like a question nobody had bothered to ask. How long could they have been there? She asked. Ethan crouched several feet away, careful not to crowd Grim. Long enough to explain why he stopped allowing handlers near his neck. Grim's golden eyes followed him, wary but quiet. Emily set the brush beside her and studied the tangled fur. If we leave them there, they will keep bothering him. I know. Ethan's voice was low, but silver affects wolves differently. Removing them too quickly could frighten him. Emily glanced toward the gate, where the guards stood rigidly beside Marcus Hale. The royal beastmaster had arrived without her noticing. He wore a dark green coat and an expression of practiced concern. Your Majesty, Marcus called, step away from the animal. I will have my men secure him. Grim immediately stiffened. Emily felt the change beneath her hand before she heard the warning rumble. No, she whispered. Ethan's eyes moved to her. What? He knows that voice. Marcus's expression hardened. Of course he knows my voice. I have managed these kennels for 6 years. Emily watched Grim turn his head away from the gate. The great wolf that everyone called uncontrollable was making himself smaller, pressing closer to the straw. Something inside her tightened. She knew that movement too. It was what frightened creatures did when escape felt impossible. Your Majesty, Emily said carefully. Could everyone step back? One of the guards looked offended, but Ethan rose immediately. 20 feet from the gate, he ordered. Marcus protested. That is unnecessary. Ethan did not raise his voice. Then it should be easy to obey. The guards withdrew. Marcus followed more slowly. Only when their footsteps faded did Grim's breathing settle. Emily waited until the tension left his shoulders, then held her open palm where he could see it. I am going to help you, she murmured. But you decide if I stay. Grim sniffed her fingers. A moment later, he lowered his head. Ethan watched in silence as Emily gently worked through the fur around the first fragment. She never rushed. Whenever Grim tensed, she stopped. Whenever he relaxed, she continued. At last, a thin piece of silver came free and dropped softly onto the straw. Grim released a long breath. Emily smiled despite herself. 1. Ethan picked up a clean cloth and moved closer. Tell me what you need. The request surprised her. Kings gave instructions. They did not usually ask servants how to help. Hold the cloth beneath his shoulder, please. Ethan obeyed. Together they removed another fragment, then another. With each one, Grim seemed to breathe more easily. Emily counted 7 before she finally sat back. 7 pieces, all similar in size, all hidden where thick fur would conceal them. Ethan stared at them in his palm. His face remained controlled, but his eyes had gone cold. These were placed deliberately, he said. Emily looked toward the gate. Marcus was watching them from the corridor. The moment their eyes met, he smiled. It was polite, almost reassuring. Yet Emily felt Grim move closer against her side. Then she noticed something else. On Marcus Hale's right glove, barely visible beneath the cuff, shimmered a dusting of silver. Emily did not look away from Marcus's glove. The silver dust was faint, no more than a pale shimmer against dark leather. But after holding 7 matching fragments in her own hands, she could not convince herself it meant nothing. Ethan followed her gaze. For one quiet second, his expression revealed nothing. Then he closed his fingers around the pieces of silver. "Marcus," he called. The Beastmaster stepped forward, stopping outside the gate. "Your Majesty, where did these come from?" Ethan opened his palm. Marcus barely glanced at them. The beast runs through brush, fencing, equipment. He could have picked them up anywhere. Emily felt Grim tense beside her. All 7 beneath the same part of his coat. She asked before caution could stop her. Marcus turned toward her. His smile disappeared. "You clean fireplaces, Miss Carter. I manage royal animals." The familiar sting of humiliation touched Emily's chest. She had heard versions of those words for years. Stay quiet. Know your place. Let stronger wolves decide what is true. Her fingers tightened around the wooden brush. Grim nudged her wrist with his nose. The gesture was so gentle that her fear loosened. "Then you should have noticed he was hurting," she said. Silence settled over the kennel. Marcus stared at her as if an Omega servant had no right to challenge him. Ethan, however, looked at Grim. The wolf had stretched comfortably beside Emily again, his breathing deeper now that the silver was gone. "She noticed in less than an hour," Ethan said. "You have had 6 years." Marcus straightened. "Your Majesty, Grim has always been unstable. That animal has resisted every training method we have tried. Maybe that is because everyone kept trying to control him," Emily said softly. Ethan looked at her. She almost apologized, but stopped herself. Grim did not need her apology. He needed someone to keep paying attention. Emily picked up the brush again and drew it carefully through the thick fur along his back. One stroke, then another. Grim's eyes slowly closed. The transformation in him was not magical or dramatic. That made it more powerful. Nothing had conquered him. Nothing had broken his will. He had simply discovered that one pair of hands did not intend to demand anything. Ethan lowered himself onto the straw several feet away. "May I try?" Emily blinked. No one had ever asked her permission for anything inside Blackridge. She handed him the brush. Grim's eyes opened immediately. Ethan stopped. "What now?" "Do not reach from above," Emily said. "Let him see your hand first." The Alpha King extended his palm. Grim sniffed it, then looked toward Emily. She smiled faintly. "It is all right." Only then did the wolf relax. Ethan brushed once along Grim's shoulder. A quiet wonder crossed the king's face before he could hide it. Outside the gate, Marcus shifted his weight. Emily noticed. So did Ethan. "Captain Reed," Ethan said without turning. "Seal the kennels. No records leave this building, and nobody enters Grim's enclosure without my permission." Marcus's voice sharpened. "Surely you are not suggesting misconduct based on the suspicions of a servant." Ethan rose slowly. "No." He looked at the silver in his palm, then at the dust on Marcus's glove. "I am ordering an investigation based on evidence." Marcus went pale. Grim suddenly lifted his head toward the far end of the kennel, ears forward. Emily followed his gaze and noticed a locked storage door she had ignored before. From behind it came a faint metallic rattle. Grim stood, walked to the door, and looked back at her. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What is in there?" Marcus answered too quickly. "Nothing that concerns her." Emily rose beside Grim. For the first time that morning, the great beast did not look frightened. He looked certain, and when Emily stepped toward the locked door, he went with her. Grim stopped before the storage door and pressed his nose against the narrow gap beneath it. The faint metallic rattle came again. Emily felt the wolf's body tighten beside her, But this time she understood enough not to mistake fear for aggression. There is something in there he recognizes, she said. Marcus stepped forward. That room contains training equipment. Nothing more. Ethan held out his hand toward Captain Reed. Key. Marcus answered before the captain could move. I keep the only one. Ethan turned to him. Then give it to me. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Marcus finally reached beneath his coat and produced a small brass key. His movements remained controlled, but Emily noticed how carefully he avoided looking at Grimm. Ethan unlocked the door himself. The hinges gave a tired creak as cold air slipped from the dark room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with grooming tools, leather harnesses, medicine bottles, and neatly labeled boxes. At first, everything appeared ordinary. Then Grimm refused to cross the threshold. His paws planted against the stone floor. Emily stopped immediately. You do not have to go inside, she whispered. Ethan glanced at her, then at the wolf. Stay with him. He entered with Captain Reed, while Emily remained near the doorway. Morning light reached only a few feet into the storage room, but it was enough to reveal a locked wooden cabinet against the back wall. Ethan opened it. His silence told Emily what he had found before she saw it. Inside were several small containers marked with the royal symbol for silver handling, along with bundles of narrow silver training pins almost identical to the fragments removed from Grimm's fur. Captain Reed lifted a ledger from the shelf. Your Majesty, these supplies were issued directly to the Beastmaster's office. Marcus shook his head. Silver equipment is standard for emergencies involving royal wolves. That proves nothing. Emily looked at Grimm. His attention was fixed not on the cabinet, but on a long leather training glove hanging from a hook beside it. Silver dust shimmered across the fingertips. Grimm took one step backward. Emily instinctively moved with him. That glove, she said. Marcus's face tightened. Do not touch my equipment. Ethan slowly turned. Your equipment? The question was quiet. Marcus realized his mistake. I meant kennel equipment. Captain Reed removed the glove carefully and compared the residue with the fragments Ethan still held. It appears consistent. Marcus exhaled sharply. This is absurd. You are allowing an inexperienced servant and an animal to turn routine training supplies into accusations. Emily's cheeks warmed, but she forced herself to remain still. I am not accusing you because I am a servant, she said. I am asking why Grimm becomes afraid when he hears your voice. Marcus looked at her with open irritation. Animals fear authority. No, Emily replied. They fear what they remember. Grimm leaned against her leg. The contact steadied her. Ethan studied the two of them for a long moment, then faced Marcus. Until this investigation is complete, you are relieved of responsibility for the royal kennels. Marcus stared at him. Your Majesty, I have served this fortress for 6 years. Then 6 years of records should make the truth easy to establish. Captain Reed gestured toward the corridor. Marcus hesitated before finally walking away under escort. Only after his footsteps disappeared did Grimm's shoulders relax. Emily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Ethan came to stand several feet from her. You saw what none of us saw. She shook her head. I only watched him. That is exactly what none of us did. His words landed somewhere deep inside her. For years, Emily had been told that her quietness made her weak, that her inability to shift fully made her lesser. Yet the Alpha King was looking at her, as if those same qualities had revealed something strength had overlooked. Grimm suddenly nudged the brush lying on the floor toward her. Emily laughed softly and picked it up. Apparently, we are not finished. For the first time, Ethan smiled. It was brief, almost unfamiliar on his face. Then Captain Reed called from inside the storage room. Your Majesty, there is something else. Ethan turned. The captain stood beside an open ledger, his expression grave. Grimm was not the only animal listed. Captain Reed carried the ledger into the morning light and placed it on an empty feed table. Ethan stepped beside him while Emily remained near Grimm, the brush moving slowly through the wolf's thick coat. The pages were filled with dates, animal identification numbers, supply requests, and short notes written in Marcus Hale's precise handwriting. At first, Emily could make little sense of them. Then Reed pointed to a repeated symbol beside several entries. Silver exposure, he said. Ethan's jaw tightened. How many? Reed turned another page. At least 12 animals over the past 2 years. Emily's hand stopped. Grimm immediately looked up at her. She resumed brushing, softer this time. Where are they now? She asked. Reed scanned the ledger. Some were transferred. Others were classified as unsuitable for royal service. Emily felt a hollow ache settle in her chest. The words sounded so clean on paper. Unsuitable, unstable, difficult. She knew what it was like to have one word decide how everyone saw you. There are locations listed, Reed continued. 3 are still at Blackridge. Ethan gave orders immediately. The remaining animals were to be examined by independent healers, all silver supplies secured, and every handler interviewed separately. Nobody questioned him. Yet Emily noticed something different in his voice now. This was not the distant authority she had heard in the fortress halls. He sounded personally disappointed. I trusted Marcus with creatures that could not speak for themselves, Ethan said quietly. Emily looked at him. You trusted the person everyone told you was the expert. That does not make the mistake smaller. She considered that before answering. No, but what you do after learning the truth matters too. Ethan turned toward her. For a moment, the sounds of the kennels seemed to fade. Emily almost wished she had remained silent. Omegas did not usually offer kings lessons about responsibility, but Ethan did not appear offended. Instead, something thoughtful entered his pale gray eyes. People underestimate you often, do they not? Emily gave a small shrug. It makes life quieter. That was not my question. She looked down at Grim. Yes. The answer came softer than she intended. My wolf never developed the way others expected. I can shift only partially, and my scent is weak. Most packs value what can be measured quickly. Strength, rank, dominance. And what do you value? Ethan asked. Emily ran the brush carefully behind Grim's ear. The enormous wolf leaned into it. Whether something feels safe when I am near it. Ethan stared at her as though the answer had reached somewhere he kept guarded. Before he could respond, footsteps sounded from the corridor. 2 guards appeared, but Marcus was no longer between them. Captain Reed frowned. Where is Hale? One guard looked uneasy. He requested permission to retrieve personal records from his office. Another officer escorted him. Reed's face changed. I gave no such permission. Ethan was already moving. Seal the fortress gates. A distant bell began ringing through Blackridge. Once, twice, 3 times. Grim rose abruptly. His ears turned toward the courtyard. Emily felt a strange pressure in the air, not danger exactly, but urgency. Then a young kennel assistant came running around the corner, breathless. Your Majesty, the eastern holding pens are open. Ethan stopped. How many animals? All 3 from the ledger. Emily's stomach dropped. The assistant shook his head quickly. They are not attacking anyone. They are frightened. They ran into the royal courtyard. Another bell sounded. Grim walked to the enclosure gate and looked back at Emily. She understood before anyone spoke. He wants to go to them. Ethan studied Grim, then Emily. Can you keep him calm? She met the king's eyes. Yesterday, she would have said she was only a servant. This morning, that answer no longer felt true. Emily opened the gate. No, she said quietly. But I think he can help me keep them calm. Grim stepped through the open gate before anyone could reconsider. But instead of running, he stopped beside Emily and waited. That small act of restraint gave Ethan the answer he needed. Stay close to her, he told the guards. Emily almost smiled at the strange order. A few hours ago, the fortress had treated her as someone who needed protection from Grim. Now the king was trusting Grim to walk beside her. They moved quickly through the stone passage toward the royal courtyard, where frightened voices echoed beneath the morning bells. When Emily emerged into the open air, she saw 3 wolves scattered across nearly 100 feet of snow-covered ground. One crouched beneath a stone archway. Another paced beside the fountain. The third stood near the outer stairs, watching every person around it with nervous eyes. Soldiers had formed a wide circle, keeping their distance. Lower your weapons, Ethan ordered. The soldiers obeyed immediately. Grim remained beside Emily, alert but calm. The pacing wolf noticed him first. It stopped. Then the others did too. Emily understood. They knew Grim. Give them room, she whispered. Ethan repeated the command louder, sending everyone another 20 feet back. Emily took one slow step forward. Grim matched her. Then another. The nearest wolf retreated. Emily stopped. That is fine, she said softly. You do not know me yet. She sat down on the cold stone instead of approaching farther. Grim settled beside her. Minutes passed. Nobody moved. The courtyard grew so quiet that Emily could hear wind brushing snow from the rooftops. Eventually, the wolf beneath the archway lowered its head. The one near the fountain stopped pacing. Ethan watched from behind her, realizing she was doing nothing his trainers would recognize as training. She issued no commands. She demanded no submission. She simply made herself predictable. Safe. Then a side door opened. Marcus Hale appeared at the top of the eastern stairs with a leather case in one hand. Captain Reed called his name, and every wolf in the courtyard reacted at once. They backed away. Grim rose and moved directly in front of Emily. Ethan's gaze hardened. Marcus froze. "I was retrieving records," he said. "Those records were supposed to remain sealed," Reed replied. Marcus glanced toward the open courtyard gate. Ethan noticed. "Do not leave," the king said. Marcus tightened his grip on the case. "You are destroying 6 years of service because a servant thinks frightened animals understand her." Emily stood slowly behind Grim. "They do not have to understand me." Marcus looked at her. "Then what exactly do you think you are proving?" "That they understand you." The words were quiet, but they carried across the courtyard. Marcus's face lost its practiced calm. Grim remained between them, not threatening, simply refusing to move. The other 3 wolves gradually gathered behind him. Ethan looked from the animals to Marcus. For different creatures, the same response, the same fear. "Open the case," Ethan ordered. Marcus hesitated. Captain Reed stepped forward and accepted it from him. Inside were kennel records, several keys, and a small sealed pouch. Reed opened the pouch carefully. Silver training pins gleamed inside. Marcus immediately shook his head. "Those are authorized supplies." "Then why remove them during an investigation?" Ethan asked. Marcus had no answer. Emily looked down as Grim brushed his shoulder against her hand. The 3 other wolves had moved closer now, watching her with cautious curiosity. She crouched and placed the wooden brush on the stone between them. "Nobody is going to force you," she whispered. One of the wolves took a tentative step forward. Then Ethan felt something unexpected stir deep within him. His own wolf, silent through years of court ceremonies and political alliances, suddenly became intensely aware of the Omega kneeling in the snow. Not because she commanded for frightened beasts, because she refused to. Ethan's breath caught as a single instinctive word surfaced inside him, clear as a bell beneath moonlight. "Mate." Ethan did not speak the word aloud. "Mate." It remained inside him, impossible and unmistakable, while Emily knelt in the snow with 4 wary wolves gathered around her. For most of his life, Ethan had been taught that a mate bond would arrive like thunder, overwhelming every other instinct. This felt different, quiet, certain, almost gentle, and somehow that frightened him more. Emily glanced over her shoulder. "Your Majesty?" Ethan realized she had noticed his silence. "I am fine," he said, though his wolf strongly disagreed with how ordinary those words sounded. Captain Reed closed the leather case and handed it to a guard. "Marcus Hale, you are confined to your quarters until the council reviews these records." Marcus looked from Reed to Ethan, then finally to Emily. "You are trusting her over me?" Ethan stepped forward. "I am trusting evidence." His voice carried across the courtyard. "And I am correcting a failure that should have been discovered long ago." Marcus's expression tightened, but he said nothing as the guards escorted him away. Emily watched until the door closed behind them. Only then did the tension leave the wolves. The smallest of the 3 newcomers approached the wooden brush lying on the stone and sniffed it. Emily smiled. "You can have your turn later." Ethan nearly smiled too. The absurd normality of her words softened something in the courtyard. Soldiers lowered their shoulders. Servants watching from distant archways began whispering, but not with mockery this time. They were looking at Emily differently. She noticed and immediately became uncomfortable. "I should return to my duties," she said. Ethan stared at her. "Your duties?" "The West Hall fireplaces will not clean themselves." Captain Reed coughed into his fist, suspiciously close to laughter. Ethan gave him a look before returning his attention to Emily. "Miss Carter, you discovered evidence of misconduct in my royal kennels, calmed for distressed wolves, and somehow convinced Grim to behave like an oversized house dog." Grim looked up at him. Ethan reconsidered his wording. "A very dignified, oversized house dog." Emily covered a smile. "I still have a work schedule." "Not anymore." Her smile vanished. Ethan immediately saw alarm in her eyes. "I am not dismissing you." "Oh." The relief in that single word bothered him. How often had she expected the worst simply because someone with authority called her name? Ethan softened his voice. I want you to remain with the animals while the independent healers examine them. Only if you agree. Emily blinked. The Alpha King had asked. He had not commanded. She looked at Grim, then at the other wolves. I agree. By noon, the royal healers had confirmed similar irritation beneath the coats of 2 other animals. No severe injuries. Only signs that supported what the ledger already suggested. Ethan ordered every questionable training practice suspended immediately. Then, before the assembled kennel staff, he did something Emily never expected. Emily Carter identified what trained professionals overlooked, he said. From this moment forward, no person at Blackridge will call compassion weakness in my presence. Emily felt every eye turn toward her. Heat rose to her cheeks. She wanted to disappear, but Grim sat beside her like a black mountain, making invisibility impossible. Ethan approached slowly and stopped several feet away. His wolf stirred again, warm and certain. Emily felt something too, a strange pull beneath her ribs, faint but growing, as though a sleeping part of her had heard a distant voice. Ethan extended his hand, then waited. He gave her the choice. Emily looked at his open palm. For years, people had measured her by everything she lacked. A complete shift, a strong scent, rank, power. Ethan was looking at what she had done instead. She placed her hand in his. Warmth traveled through her fingers, soft but immediate. Grim rose. The other wolves lifted their heads. Emily's breath caught as a pale crescent of light appeared beneath the skin of her wrist. The crescent on Emily's wrist brightened for one breath, then softened into a pale silver mark beneath her skin. She stared at it, unable to move. Ethan was equally still. Around them, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath. Even Grim watched their joined hands with unusual attention. What is happening? Emily whispered. Ethan released her hand gently, not because he wanted distance, but because he saw uncertainty in her eyes. Something I should explain before anyone else decides what it means for you. That answer surprised her. You know what this is? His pale gray eyes met hers. I believe so. Captain Reed quietly ordered the remaining staff back to their duties, giving them space. Ethan waited until the courtyard had mostly cleared before speaking again. Among my family, there are old records of a crescent appearing when 2 wolves recognize a rare mate bond. Emily looked at the mark. But my wolf barely exists. Do not say that. The firmness in his voice made her look up. Ethan softened immediately. Your wolf does not need to resemble anyone else's to be real. Something inside Emily tightened, then slowly eased. All her life, people had treated her incomplete shift as proof that nature had made a mistake. Yet the Alpha King was standing before her without pity, without embarrassment, without trying to turn her difference into something that needed fixing. Does this mean I am supposed to become your mate? She asked. Ethan could have answered with tradition. He could have spoken about destiny, royal bloodlines, or ancient law. Instead, he shook his head. It means there may be a bond between us. What happens because of it is still your choice. Emily stared at him. Choice. The word felt almost more extraordinary than the glowing mark. Grim stepped between them and nudged Emily's hand until she laughed softly. Ethan looked down at the wolf. Your timing is terrible. Grim sat beside Emily with complete satisfaction. 3 weeks later, Blackridge no longer sounded the same. The harsh commands that once echoed through the royal kennels had been replaced by calmer voices and patient routines. Independent healers examined every animal. Training methods were rewritten. Marcus Hale was permanently removed from royal service after the council confirmed the records and unauthorized use of silver. Ethan also created a new position within the kennels, one focused not on dominance, but animal welfare and trust. He offered it to Emily. She accepted only after making him promise she could disagree with him. You already do, Ethan had replied. Frequently. On the first evening of her new role, Emily sat beneath an old pine in the courtyard, drawing the wooden brush through Grim's restored black coat. His fur had regained its shine, and no collar circled his neck. Ethan approached carrying 2 mugs of hot cider. Grim opened one golden eye. Do not start, Ethan told him. Emily smiled as Ethan sat several feet away and offered her a mug. Above Blackridge, the winter moon rose over the mountains. The crescent on Emily's wrist glimmered faintly. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He had kept his promise. No pressure, no ceremony, no demand that destiny move faster than trust. Emily looked at Grim, then at the king beside her. You know what is strange? What? Everyone says I changed him. She brushed gently behind Grim's ear. I do not think I did. Ethan understood. You gave him a reason to stop being afraid. Emily looked at him. Maybe that is all any of us need sometimes. Ethan's expression softened. Grim placed his enormous head between them, forcing both to move aside. Emily laughed, and Ethan shook his head. Beneath the moon, the feared beast rested without chains. The overlooked Omega sat without shame. And the Alpha King finally understood that the strongest bond in his kingdom had begun with something no command could ever create: the quiet courage to be gentle.